At the end of this lecture, you should be able to identify and understand the main processes that exist in the carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur cycles. Let's begin with the carbon cycle. Carbon is the most important building block for all living matter, and as such, it plays a key role in the biosphere, in food webs, and the recycling of organisms. At the same time, it is exchanged with the soil environment or geosphere through soil carbon and fossil fuels, and also the hydrosphere through aquatic food webs and sediment formation, and the atmosphere. It is interesting to note that forests store about 86% of the planet's terrestrial above-ground carbon and 73% of the planet's soil carbon. Thus, there is quite a substantial portion of the carbon cycle associated with forests. The carbon cycle begins with the carbon that is locked up in living organic matter. Primary producers, such as plants, fix carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into organic matter and subsequently the food chain, while all living organisms respire, producing carbon dioxide that re-enters the atmospheric pool. When organisms die, they form dead organic matter, which is broken down by decomposers, releasing carbon dioxide back to the atmosphere, or is buried deep into the soil to eventually become coal and oil. When these fossil fuels are burned, carbon is returned back into the atmosphere via CO2. Similar processes occur in the oceans, where photosynthesis takes dissolved carbon dioxide and converts it to organic matter, while respiration of marine organisms release CO2 back into the water and atmosphere. When marine organisms die and are decomposed, carbon is released, or the detritus settles and eventually forms the sediments. And so the cycle continues. So how do cells make a living out of carbon? Let's take this cell for example. It requires nutrients to build its cell components. Energy is needed for this process. Where does it get its energy from? An energy source in the form of molecules is generally broken down to release energy, and waste products are generated in the process. When nutrients are fixed into cell components, we call this process anabolism or biosynthesis. Catabolism is the name we give for the process where energy is released when molecules are broken down. A special form of catabolism exists in respiration. Here, energy is released from sugars and carbohydrates. The classic respiration equation takes glucose and oxygen and releases carbon dioxide and water, and of course energy. The reverse process, where carbon dioxide and water are fixed into organic molecules such as sugar and carbohydrates, is called photosynthesis or phototrophic metabolism. This process requires light energy, and it is carried out by photoautotrophs or phototrophic organisms. The light energy is captured by chlorophyll pigments in the case of plants, and carbon dioxide is then fixed into carbohydrates and sugars. This is the general equation for photosynthesis. In the case of plants, A represents oxygen, so H2A is water, and 2A here represents the oxygen molecule. This special case of photosynthesis where oxygen is used is known as oxygenic photosynthesis, and it is carried out by plants. Here, chlorophyll is used to trap the light energy which is required. The other type of photosynthesis is known as anoxygenic photosynthesis, which is carried out by certain groups of bacteria. Here, the oxygen in water is replaced by sulfur, so that the raw material in the chemical equation is hydrogen sulfide. The bacteria are known as phototrophic purple bacteria and phototrophic green bacteria. As shown in these diagrams, you can see that they are colored, and this is because of the pigments that they possess. These pigments are called bacteriochlorophylls and help to trap the light energy which is needed for the photosynthesis. While photosynthesis uses light energy to fix carbon dioxide into organic matter, chemosynthesis or lithotrophic metabolism uses the chemical energy found in the bonds within molecules in order to fix carbon dioxide into organic compounds. This energy from chemical bonds is harnessed from inorganic chemicals such as ammonia, hydrogen sulfide, hydrogen, and methane gas. The microorganisms which carry out this process are called chemolithotrophs, or literally rock eaters, and these include the sulfate-reducing bacteria as well as iron bacteria. Both these bacteria can be found in natural environments as well as in wastewater treatment plants where they are used to help break down waste materials. Apart from its role in biological organisms, carbon is also involved in many geological processes. The inorganic forms of carbon include carbon dioxide dissolved in water, which is carbonic acid, H2CO3, bicarbonate, HCO3-, and carbonate, which is CO3-2-. These different forms of inorganic carbon play an important part in controlling the pH environment for aquatic organisms and also provides the raw materials for chemosynthesis and photosynthesis. Carbon also plays a very important role in sediment creation. This occurs when bicarbonate, calcium bicarbonate, precipitates in fresh waters to form calcium carbonate precipitate. This calcium carbonate turns the water into a milky solution. Another important geological process is the weathering of silicate rocks. Here, carbonic acid reacts with weathered rock such as calcium silicate to produce bicarbonate ions. These bicarbonate ions then flow through the surface waters to the oceans, where they then become marine carbonates. In the oceans, marine carbonates form the backbone of many marine animals and microscopic plants such as diatoms and coccolithophores. This photo shows a picture of a coccolithophore, and you can see from here that it has very beautiful and ornate calcium carbonate plates. When these organisms and other animals die, their calcium carbonate skeletons and plates are compacted and eventually become limestone. In terrestrial systems, the slow decomposition and compaction of plant material leads to the formation of peat, coal, and oil, and subsequently these are then harnessed by man to burn as fossil fuels. Carbon also plays an important role in ocean circulation. First of all, at higher latitudes near the poles, seawater temperature drops considerably, making seawater more dense. This results in a sinking of the denser seawater, which drives the circulation current deep in the oceans, following the blue line. At lower latitudes, heat from the tropics drives these deep currents back to the surface in the Indian and Pacific Oceans. This process is known as the thermohaline circulation. At the same time, near the poles, the cold temperature also affects the solubility of carbon dioxide, where it becomes more soluble with lower temperature. Hence, the denser, sinking deep water at the poles also carries much more carbon dioxide and acts as a pump to pump carbon from the atmosphere deep into the ocean's interior. At a later time, when the deep water upwells at warmer latitudes, it strongly vents out carbon dioxide to the atmosphere because of the reduced solubility at higher temperatures. This process is also known as the solubility pump. Another interesting fact in the carbon cycle of the ocean lies on the biological side. We have seen that carbon dioxide is fixed by marine phytoplankton into the organic matter and then transferred through food webs to higher marine organisms. However, carbon can also be fixed into the inorganic calcium carbonate shells of various marine creatures, such as crustacea, coccolithophores, and corals. These two types of carbon in marine organisms lead to different types of carbon transport in the oceans. The organic part of this transport is known as the soft tissue pump. Here, decomposition by bacteria returns the organic carbon to dissolved carbon dioxide. The inorganic portion of the transport is called the carbonate or hard tissue pump. Calcium carbonate dissolves at a rate dependent on the local carbonate chemistry, but as this process is generally slower than the synthesis process, there is a net transport of carbon into the deep ocean. Overall, this is known as a biological pump and carbon sink. So, what does all this have to do with global warming? Well, most people know that forests help to remove carbon dioxide. and reduce global warming. In fact, the oceans can also act as a major sink for carbon dioxide, especially when you consider that most of the world is water. The question is, can we increase primary production in the oceans so that more carbon dioxide can be removed via this biological pump? What is limiting the growth of phytoplankton in these oceans? Can environmental engineers do anything to increase carbon dioxide removal in this way? These are questions which perhaps you can answer as you learn more in this course.